Hello people of the world, and welcome to today's episode of Coffee Chats with Jax. Today I want to talk about anxiety. I have grown up knowing that I've struggled with depression since I was about 17. I mean, I'm not healed by any means of depression and an expert at it, but I'm comfortable talking about it to the point of it not being taboo to me. But anxiety is not something that I have really claimed and owned as something that has been a part of my life. And that's interesting because I will talk about it I don't struggle with anxiety, but I had this really bad anxiety attack, or I don't struggle with anxiety, but I've for some reason really anxious right now, or I couldn't describe it, but I constantly am I don't have anxiety. And I think this past week I have just decided to finally own the fact that yes, I, Jackie, have anxiety. And that's okay. For me, I tend to get really anxious about relationships. It kind of what I'm picking up on through therapy and conversations with friends and stuff is that the things that we get the most anxious about and the most, depressed about, there's a kind of a theme going. It tends to be our biggest insecurities and kind of where we find our worth and our identity. And for me, I kind of sum it all up to the relationships in my life, whether that's friendships, family, romantic relationships, any and all that stuff. I tend to define myself and think that I am okay or not okay based on how those are doing with me. When I start to get really bad anxiety, the first thing in my mind is that I get insecure about my relationships and I start to question every conversation, every hangout, every interaction. Do these people really like me? Do they really care about me? And my heart starts racing and it's this whole thing. And so recently, for some reason, I've been having a lot of anxiety. And I don't know what it's about. I think that when I have depression, it's very controlling over my day. It's kind of like this dark filter is just placed over every experience that I have, every conversation, anything, and kind of the future feels unbearable. There's no light. It just feels like I'm this heavy weight on my bed and I don't know how to talk, and it just is dark and slow. Anxiety is kind of the opposite in a lot of ways. It's my heart starts racing really, really fast. I start to get a little bit sweaty. I'm really sensitive to noise. I was sitting in this coffee shop last week before work when I really just was hit with it. And all of a sudden, all these things start piling up that could go wrong. And I start freaking out, and it's almost like I get outside of my body, I get outside of time. And something that my therapist has been telling me about in these different situations, whether it's an anxiety attack or a depression episode, are triggered with PTSD or something is bringing something up in you, it means that you're leaving your window of tolerance. And when you leave your window of tolerance, apparently there's two different places that you can go. You either go into hypoarousal, which is referred to as the freeze response, which is kind of where you can't defend yourself, you can't talk, you can't really move, you just kind of shut down. You have no energy, you're just disconnected. I tend to find myself going into that zone in the really, really dark days of depression where I just can't have a conversation. I can't really see anything past in front of me, but I can't even really focus on what's in front of me. So I find myself just sitting and watching something funny on TV, but not being present for anything. I just can't really move. But the other one is called the hyperarousal, which is called, in other words, fight or flight, which is kind of the opposite of that. It's where you feel tension and shaking and impulsivity, and you might make bad decisions, and you jumpy and just you feel emotional and overwhelmed and angry and impulsive. I also find myself in that area. But what I have found is that, for me personally, more from anxiety, because I start to panic that I'm losing control over things, and so I make a really quick decision based off of that fear, based off of that anxiety. Last year I bought a puppy, or I jump into a relationship, or I go out with a person that I really should not be going out with, or my heart starts racing and my head starts spinning and I feel nauseous. Basically, either one of those things, whether it's the freeze response or the fight or flight response, it takes you out of your window of tolerance. I'd asked you guys kind of what your experiences are and how you tend to cope with anxiety, and I've gotten a handful of lots of really, really great answers. One in particular that stood out to me was interesting because it's the same kind of answer that my therapist just gave to me. It's called staying grounded, and she actually gave me this handout for it, which was really cool. Finding your grounding is kind of finding your center, finding your state of calm, putting yourself back into your window of tolerance. So there's different ways that you can find your grounding, which I'm going to start working on this week, and I'll keep you posted on it. There's mental, physical, and soothing calming techniques, is what she's telling me. Mental techniques can be anything like putting your brain back into a different place. For example, describing your favorite movie to yourself, or describing something that you see, or play a categories game, name as many movies or TV shows or baseball teams that you can think of, anything to kind of bring your mind back to the present. Or then there's physical grounding, which could be stretching, noticing your body, wiggling your toes, holding onto something that has a texture that you like a grounding object. A lot of people like to do yoga for physical grounding. It's just to bring your body back to the present. Then there's soothing grounding, which could be anything like saying a kind statement to yourself, or thinking about or looking at pictures of someone you really love, or think of something that you're looking forward to doing in the future. The thing to remember is that these grounding exercises do not solve the problem, but they're techniques, they're coping mechanisms that are healthy, because I have found a lot of the other things that I do that aren't good for me are also coping mechanisms. They are survival techniques. I'm trying to change my language around, if I think I made a bad choice by buying a puppy, me kind of bad talking to myself, feeling shame for that by saying you made a bad choice, or by running away or numbing out, or any of these things that I would consider my bad decisions, my coping, whatever. I'm trying to change my language and know in my mind that that is my body's way of trying to survive. Because there's things in this life that trigger us from different traumatic experiences, or bring us anxiety, or pull out our insecurities and stuff. And our body and our brain, it's designed to keep us safe. Things can remind us of a past traumatic experience, and our body is going to respond the same way. So in order to survive that, it's going to make us think we want to numb out or run away or buy a puppy or whatever. We have to have grace and be kind and acknowledge that we are human and we are trying, and to not give up. So these grounding exercises, they don't solve the problem, but they are amazing things to have on hand, because when you're in the middle of an anxiety attack or a depressive episode, anything helps. And having something there that can give you tips and ideas of things to do that are not detrimental to your health or do not prompt you to move across the country. I am no expert in anxiety whatsoever. I have recently been dealing with it a lot, and I feel the need to kind of talk about it more, to continue to take away any stereotypes that people have about anxiety, or any shame that other people out there have if they also experience anxiety. I want to keep this conversation going. So those are just some things that I've been learning and I've been experiencing. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoy what I have to say and you want to learn more, then pick up a copy of my book, Finding Home. If you want to buy a personalized copy of that, the link is in the description box below. Or if you want to get more involved in what I'm doing and support me as an independent writer, speaker, link for that description box below, patreon.com/JackieGTV. Thank you so much. I love you, and I'll see you next time.